why should we look at all this stuff? I mean, this is the Bible, this is ancient history. What's this got to do with us, you know? And what's more, it's hard work, you know. This guy's going to go on and on for another hour and a bit probably. And by the end of that, we'll be thoroughly exhausted. So why do we have to suffer like this? Anyhow, the point is, as I said, the principle is not actually discounting all other histories apart from the Judeo-Christian history. It is not doing that. But when the principle book was written, it was written and addressed to basically Korean Christians. And, but the principle is very, very, very clear. God is at work in all of human history, in all traditions and in all cultures. The religious founders are the saints of human history. So they're in the, as I'm speaking here as a unificationist, I'm speaking here as a religious follower of Father Moen. They're in the, the central place of worship of our worldwide religious community. There's the prayer room, and on the wall, there's the picture of Buddha, the picture of Confucius, the picture of Jesus, and the Islamic, script, beautiful Islamic script, representing the four great saints. And out the front of the building, they just constructed statues. So there's a statue of Confucius, a statue of Buddha, there's a statue of Jesus. There's not a statue of Muhammad, because that wouldn't be in accordance with. So there's a pillar, and on the pillar is the Quran. That's a little bit unusual. That's a bit unusual. What about all the other ones? What about all the other ones? What about our one that isn't there? Well, actually, no, fundamentally,
the whole attitude of this point of view is to respect all those traditions. What does it mean? It means God is at work in all of them. So we're going to reveal to you a historical pattern. Why are we interested in this historical pattern? Why is the biblical story? Because, take it from the Judeo-Christian perspective, right? It may not be your perspective, but take it from that one and know that that should be able to be applied within your culture and tradition as well. Take that perspective. Why are we looking at this family? Because ultimately, from this family came Messiah, the Messiah. So why? Why to that family? Why from this background? So we're going to look at Adam's family. Didn't work out. We're going to look at Noah's family. Didn't work out. We're going to look at Abraham's family. That's as far as I'm going to get. It worked out. Finally, they made the foundation of faith and the foundation of substance. Therefore, from Abraham's family, who was basically a nobody, we'll get into that later, wasn't apparently an outstanding person in his time in human history, but he became the most significant personage in human history by almost any sort of measurement, because he is the origin of the three great monotheistic faiths. Judaism, Christianity, which is rooted absolutely in Judaism, and Islam. They all trace themselves to Abraham. He is the father of faith for all the great monotheistic traditions. But he looked like a man wandering around, leaving what wealth and foundation he had behind, but he became such an extraordinarily significant figure. So how and why and what's going on? Because actually, this family became the central family. But God didn't want to wait for Abraham's family. He wanted to work it straight away in Adam's family to recover the situation. So he wanted Adam's family to make an indemnity condition. So what indemnity condition did they have to make? They had to make a foundation of faith and a foundation of substance, which is fundamentally taking responsibility to do what Adam and Eve didn't manage to do. Now, of course, ideally, Adam and Eve themselves would have done it, and they would have put it right. But the principle explained the process of restoration, which is briefly described in the Bible, doesn't involve Adam. It doesn't involve Adam. Ideally, the person who makes the mistake should put the mistake right. But the implication in the principle is Adam is too compromised. So Adam is between God and Satan in this midway position. So basically what the principle explains is God needs something to work with. So God is trying to separate out a relatively good side that he can work with. And on the other hand, in a sense, Satan will accept that provided he gets a side to work with too. So then God and Satan work And what are they working for? They're seeking an object partner. Because everything, the system that God set up, it works through the system of give and take action, right? So God is a subject looking for an object. Satan is a subject looking for an object. Basically, he already set the condition, he's got an object. So Adam gets cut in two, of course, and God gets one bit and Satan gets the other one. Very ineffective. Because you cut him in two, then you haven't got much to work with, really. So Adam doesn't get cut in two. Of course, ideally, in a sense, Adam would cut himself in two and, separate his bad conduct and create a side that God could work with. But anyhow, that's not what happens. Basically, Adam gets cut in two in his two sons. Cain is his eldest son, and he's in this position. Abel's the youngest son, the second son, he's put in this position. Why is it like that? How does it come to be? But through this, God gets someone to work with, and Satan gets someone to work with, in a sense. But through this circumstance, what's God trying to do? God's trying to, by working through Abel, he wants to recover Cain. And then through working through Cain and Abel, he wants to recover Adam and Eve. And he wants to recover everything and pull it away from this influence and take it, through this process of give and take action here, and then give and take action there, and then through the children affect the parents and take the whole lot back. Restore it all, create conditions of indemnity to recover it all. And then surely what would have happened is Abel would not just be making offerings anymore. Abel would have become a religious founder. So Abel would have become the source of wisdom, the mentor, the example, the teacher, the preacher, and affected his whole family. And from his descendants or whatever, in a very short space of time, the Messiah would have appeared, as it were. Anyhow, the principle explains, it gives an explanation for so many things. The book is full of so many explanations. I almost hesitate to burden you with too many explanations, but I want to give you this one just to show you the principle is never saying it's just an arbitrary process. God said, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Sorry, this is a very strange English expression, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and you choose the person in the end. Or we have the other system where you take a pin, you close your eyes, and you stick it in. And that's the one. God doesn't operate by such a process. There has to be a principal process where God decides which one's on his side and which one's on Satan's side. In a sense, it's blindingly obvious, because through the fall, Satan took control. So then what position does Satan claim? He took the position of control. It means he takes the first, because the elder naturally has the right of dominion. So Satan started everything, so he takes the position that has right. So if you like, in the bad world, which is dominated by wrong give and take action, who's placed in the position of authority? It's not the better person, it's the more corrupt person. It's the more selfish person that's in the position of control. Do you understand? What's God trying to do? He's trying to build up a righteous person who doesn't have any position of control, and by building up a person, by that person's influence over the other one, he's trying to turn this one into a good one and wrestle the control from corrupt, evil, selfish people towards more righteous people. This is a very sensible process. And you can understand, because Satan took first, in a sense, automatically he's holding that position. But it's the natural position. So even though the fall took place down human history, fundamentally, eldest son inherits. They just changed the law in Britain. They changed the law in Britain about the succession. So for centuries, if you're a Roman Catholic, if you marry a Roman Catholic, you can't be the king, right? Not only that, but even if the sovereign has a girl first, the girl cannot become the sovereign. It's the first boy, primogeniture. It's this system. But they just, in the process, changing the law. So in the next generations, girl or boy, whichever's born first, becomes the monarch. Extraordinary situation. But so, anyhow, so the principle explains there's a reason why the first son is on this side. It's the one I just explained, but there's another reason as well. The first son represents the first relationship. This is the relationship between the archangel and Eve. This relationship, absolutely, totally ill-motivated from the archangel's point of view. He is definitely manipulating, and he is definitely abusing her for his purpose, regardless of God and thoughtless of her. And what's more, he's never supposed to have any relationship with Eve, because he's an angel and she's a human being, not supposed to have a relationship. So this is outside of the principle and evil. First son represents the first relationship. Second son, Abel, represents the second relationship. Of course, it's not good either, because this influence is affecting her when she relates to him, and through this, actually, the problem becomes a bigger problem. But the principle says, comparatively, at least she's related to the one that should have been her partner. And not only that, somewhere in her motivation is a desire to get back to God, but she makes a big mistake and doesn't repent, doesn't correct herself, and so on and so on and so on. So relatively speaking, second son representing the second relationship is relatively good in a sense. So the principle explains there is a background. God isn't making an arbitrary choice. And then these are some biblical quotes to indicate that it's clear that Abel is in the position standing to relate to God. Cain is in a position where he isn't able to relate to God. By faith, Abel offered God a better sacrifice than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as a righteous man. This is in St. Paul's letter to the Hebrews. You will see also this happening in this family. When you examine this family, you'll find this family understood by a natural code. The eldest should have authority. But in this family, strange things happen, like that one there. Jacob blesses the children of Joseph, and when he does it, you would expect he would go like that, right? But he doesn't. He goes like that. And he puts his right hand on the younger son and his left hand on the older one. Also, we're going to look at Jacob and Esau. Similar situation. Esau's the elder, Jacob's the younger. Mother gets a revelation, the younger son, 2 nations in your womb, the younger will rule over the elder. In this family, not the natural order, because the natural order has been taken. It means in the nasty, nasty, evil, corrupt world, authority is in the hands of nasty people that belong to Satan, right? If you want to make it a better place, you've got to raise up righteous people. So, of course, you raise up righteous people, and they kill the bad ones, and they tear them to pieces, and they become... No. No. So when you're watching the revolutions that are going on in the world, it's not a moment of rejoicing when you see Gaddafi torn to pieces. It's not a hopeful sign, fundamentally. You know, it's worrying. Okay, so these two positions then, what are they in the province? This is quite significant. So what we're saying is this one is in the position to deal with Satan, this one's in the position to deal with God. This one is relatively evil, relatively good. Of course, he's also a fallen human being, as well as this one, but relatively speaking, good. This one, they have to reverse their roles. So in order to put the situation right, he has the authority under Satan, but he has to relinquish the authority, and he has to give the authority to the other one. But this one will not be given it easily. In order for him to be willing to give the authority here, he has to win it. He has to pull this person. He has to win the respect of this person. He has to touch the heart of this person and pull him in this way. But God will demonstrate that his blessing is going to this side. This person, in order to do what God needs to be done, he has to recover the dominion of love. He has to recover authority, not based on violence, physical violence, intellectual violence, power through wealth, whatever it is, whereby you have authority. But he has to restore a comparatively better standard of authority, which is based on, I love God and I keep the principles, and I'm treating you right. And if I gain the authority, the world will become a better place, and God will be free to work. This is the type of process. So, very realistic. In a sense, it's a struggle going on between God and Satan, and human beings are making the decision in the end. Which way will it go? The individual is deciding, will I make good conditions and go to God's side? Do I make bad conditions and go to Satan's side? But then you get now these two people. One's more on God's side, one's more on Satan's side. God's trying to inspire the righteous person to conduct himself in such a way that he can transform the less righteous person into a righteous person. Cut him off from Satan. But from Satan's side, the unrighteous person, the nasty person, is trying to behave towards the righteous one in such a fashion that he will undermine him and make him respond to his nastiness by being nasty. And then he's cut off from God, and Satan took him. Do you understand? This is the process that's going on. Okay, so these are two positions then. The Adam's family is a little bit of an unusual situation because Abel performs two roles. In one role, he's taking the place of his father. In the other role, he's taking the place of the second son. As the second son, he has to win his older son's heart and pull him towards God. So God blesses him and relates to him, but God blesses him not for him. God blesses him so that he can influence his elder brother and pull him to God too. So that's very clear in what God expresses to them. And they are representing in this process Adam and the archangel. So he is in the position to restore through indemnity Adam's role. And he's in the position, Cain, to restore through indemnity the archangel. So Cain shouldn't do what the archangel did. He should do what a good archangel should do. And Abel shouldn't make the mess that Adam made. He should do what Adam didn't manage to do. And then by doing this, they're indemnifying. And then God can take this as a condition and say, this family has indemnified. So they've created a condition that separates them from Satan and that I can accept. Because I cannot behave in an unprincipled way. I can't say, you smashed the car, but I love you, so it doesn't matter. Because it does matter. Do you understand? It does matter. You can't get them out like that. So they take responsibility. They created a condition to separate from Satan. I will give to that. I will take that. That is my foundation. I can give to that and Satan has nothing to say because I'm not breaking the principle. I'm upholding the principle. I'm creating a pattern that will re-establish the principle. Okay, so this also has to do, of course, with mind and body in the sense that in order to make the foundation to stand in this position, this person has to gain control over their body with their mind. So this is also a sort of Cain and Abel relationship is going on here between mind and body. So this is representing the side that needs to be dominated by a righteous mind. So the mind needs to pull the body to God. The mind needs to restore the body. The mind needs to recover control over the body. This content's also there. It's actually part of the foundation of faith content. So here we go. Foundation of faith, central person is Abel. Should have been Adam. Adam should have made the foundation of faith, but he's too compromised. So when Abel makes the offering to God, which he does make, he's not doing it as Abel. He's doing it as Adam. And he does it successfully in place of his father. And then the next task comes. He's cast in this role representing Adam, and he has to relate to his brother Cain, who's the elder one, and he's the younger one, in such a way as to restore what took place between Adam and the archangel. So he manages to do it, but something happens as a result of the circumstance. Actually, they both make an offering. The elder brother makes an offering and the younger brother makes an offering. But in the biblical story, it's clear, Abel makes an offering from the fat portions of his lambs. He's a shepherd. And he makes a burnt offering from the fat portion of his lambs, and he feels is absolutely accepted by God. Cain, who's a farmer, crop farmer, arable farmer, he makes an offering from these crops. And he tries to offer it to God, and he feels at the end of it absolutely wasn't accepted. And then through that circumstance, what's happening is he is cast in the position of the archangel at the time of the fall. Do you understand? Because at the time of the fall, the archangel is in this position where he's feeling lack of love from God. Why is he placed in that position? There's a condition he's placed in that position because of the order, how the fall took place and so on, because he's the elder one. So his role is to overcome this feeling, this jealousy, this lack of love feeling. And his role is because he's actually received by God, his role is very importantly to help him to connect to God. So Cain's way to connect to God is through Abel. And Abel has to understand, I've been blessed by God, not for my own sake, but actually to bring my brother towards God. This is a very profound matter for religious people. Because when religion goes wrong, what goes wrong in religion? What goes wrong in religion is I'm being blessed, and I'm blessed, and you're not. And I'm blessed, and you're not. You're going to hell, and I'm going to heaven. This is what goes wrong, do you understand? God blesses us not for my sake, God blesses it for other people's. So if you get blessed by God and you think it's for you and not for other people, you don't understand God one iota. Do you understand? But this mistake religious people make all the time, all the time. And then they behave arrogantly and so on and so on and so on. So when this happened, God said to Cain, If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? If you do not do what is right, sin is couching at the door. It means waiting to jump on you. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. So God's wish is clear. He wishes that Cain will overcome the circumstance and use it to make, So Abel, by making his offering and having it accepted, he fulfills the foundation of faith in the place of his father Adam. But then these two roles have to be played out. So Abel succeeds in restoring what Adam didn't do, becomes a man of love, and by being a man of love wins the heart of his elder brother, even though his elder brother in the process relinquishes his elder son position and gives the authority to his younger brother. In that way, by winning this heart, he's reordering things so that it's coming under God instead of being connected. You could put Satan there if you like, but cutting off Cain from Satan, recovering it for God, restoring the proper order of dominion. Okay, so talking about Cain's responsibility. So what does Cain have to do? He has to restore the archangel's mistakes. What does it mean? It means he has to demonstrate he doesn't have the fallen natures. So how does he do that in terms of this substantial relation circumstance? He actually has to respect Abel because God has indicated that his blessing is towards Abel. And then he has to... So that's the opposite of what the archangel did, if you understand what I mean. The archangel didn't love Adam as God did, so Cain has to love Abel as God is demonstrating that he's loved. So in other words, what are we looking for in life? We're looking for the person, we're looking to find the person who's blessed by God, who's close to God, who for whatever reason, And then when you think about it in the history of religion, when people who had position and authority found someone who was a saint, and then although they've got all the power, they came underneath this person and said, "You teach me." So, and then that person, places themselves under the authority of the saint, if you see, the religious founder. Then, that teaching is expanded through that process. That's a very real type of process. So, but in order to do that, person with power or authority has to recognize that God is present in this person when they're used to the fact that I'm the one with the authority. I can do as I please. So they have to remove these fallen natures. They have to see the God in this person. They have to recognize, how am I going to get closer to God? I have to get closer to God by receiving love through this person. I have to be obedient to this person. I have to treat this person as my mentor. I have to follow what they say. I have to do the opposite of what I've been used to doing because this person tells me I've been doing the wrong stuff and I have to change my behavior. And by doing so, I have to learn God's way and I have to become a good person like him. So that's this person's responsibility. But of course, how on earth will this person fulfill that responsibility unless they're dramatically supported by this person in the process? Because this is the person who's receiving the love of God. For Cain and Abel to unite and the condition to be established, Abel has to become a person of love, such that, relatively speaking, the person can feel, something coming from him that's the love of God. That's what happened in these circumstances where the person, who had worldly authority submitted themselves to the spiritual leader. So those spiritual leaders, they were successful Abels, and they won the heart of Cain, and then their work grew and expanded as a result of that. So had Abel won the heart of Cain through making his offering, and then the two brothers united together, then actually the divine principle explains this would have an impact on the whole family, and ultimately that family, not maybe in a very long space of time, would have received a new beginning. Somebody who was born from that family, and a condition was established that they don't belong to Satan's lineage. They're a new beginning. And that person would be in a sense, a different quality of connection with God. Okay, but actually what happened, of course, Cain killed Abel. So it's the same type of mistake repeated in the next generation. It's not illicit sexual conduct this time, it's actually one person kills the other person. But fundamentally, it's repeating the same pattern. So now, selfishness, wrong type of motivation, jealousy, anger, rage is, it's exerting its authority through physical violence. So set the tradition of, power through violence. And of course, there's all sorts of different types of violence in reality. So here we go. Here's the, classical picture of Cain killing Abel. And in the background there's the offering, right? So Cain kills Abel. The situation didn't work. Satan's side has destroyed God's side in a sense. So that the foundation of substance didn't work. So as a result of this, then, Adam's family hasn't been able to make the necessary condition. God is profoundly distressed because God had hoped it would be put right. The situation is prolonged. The bad tradition is expanded and developed, and putting it right will take longer and require more effort. And Abel's potential to do good got lost. So, foundation of substance lost, and the foundation for the Messiah lost. Some lessons to learn from Adam's family. Well, some things are manifestly clear here. God wanted something to happen, but actually God couldn't make it happen, because Cain and Abel have a responsibility. So God gave some word to try and say to Cain, well, if you do the right thing, all will be well. But if you do the wrong thing, sin is waiting and couching in the door, and its desire is for you. So he gave some indication, but they have their own responsibility, because God can't have the CCD cameras and the private detectives or the chains in the basement. They have to, of their own responsibility, make the indemnity to change the pattern of human history. If they change it in the next generation, it means it hasn't gone beyond one generation. So the principal's explanation is things can be rectified comparatively simply and comparatively quickly. But God can't take human responsibility. Abel didn't complete his responsibility, so God's desire for the world he originally intended isn't stopping, so God will find somebody else. And that somebody else becomes Seth, and we'll look at that in a minute. So also the guideline is, what do we need to look for in life? Who are you looking for, You're looking for some really rich guy who's going to give you a load of money because then you'll be happy? No, you're looking for somebody who's closer to God than you. And you want to find out and learn from them how to be a better person. That's who you're looking for. So that's discipleship. Again, all the great traditions, all to do with discipleship. You're looking for that person. And the person who's looking for that person recognizes that person, finds that person. They found something so incredibly precious. So that's that part. And now let's go on to the next bit, which is the next family. And the next family is Noah's family. This is in the biblical record. Very short account, basically, of Adam and Eve's time and Cain and Abel. A few chapters in the Bible. And the next family, again, just a few chapters, is Noah's family. And it runs like this. Oh, let me get it right. Okay, here we go. So, we've studied about Adam, Cain and Abel. And we know what happens. Cain kills Abel. So God doesn't have that line to work with anymore. And Cain did it, so God works through the descendants of the third son of the family, who's called Seth. And there's quite an insignificant pattern involved, and it's to do with a mathematical formula. And the principal book actually explains quite in a lot of detail about these numbers and why they are as they are. And these numbers are to do with the pattern of the principles of creation. And that pattern can be expressed mathematically. So do you remember the first chapter? And we talked about origin, division, union. And we talked about 3 stages of growth. And we talked about the 4-position foundation. So 3, 4, and then multiples of. So the principle explains that each of the 3 stages can be divided into 3. That makes 9, right? 3 3s are 9, okay? So the principle explains 10 represents going through the formation stage, the growth formation stage, the completion formation stage. Each stage is divided in 3. So the principle explains number 10 represents reaching maturity or fulfillment. And you need to reach fulfillment by making the 4-position foundation through 10 stages. So the principle explains 40 is a very significant number. So I'm not a scientist, But if you look at the natural world, you'll find mathematical pattern. Even if you look at music, so I'm not a musician, I'm not a composer, but I understand music is incredibly beautiful mathematically, if you analyze it in that format. Beauty, love expresses itself in an orderly fashion. So, that's true of the principles of creation. It's also true of the principles of restoration. So to create the condition which God can accept and use and feels he then can righteously, keeping the principle, deal with you, you need to set a certain pattern. You need to pay a certain price, which is expressed by keeping a certain pattern, which is expressed by keeping a certain time period. So God used this. So these times are not arbitrary, they have meaning. So this 10 is connected to that 10, coming back to a new beginning, the number through which you can have a new beginning, through which you can reach. So it was a period to pay for, a period where God couldn't intervene, but by passing through 10 generations, finally God could work again. So in other words, there was a delay for God. And this also has to do with 40 times 40, this number. So the principle book explains it in more detail than I'm doing it now. And you'll find these things repeat themselves. So after 10 generations and 1,600 years, another family comes up. Not surprisingly, because we know what's going on. This family is a direct replica of Adam's family. Father and mother, Noah and his wife, we don't even know Noah's wife's name, Noah and his wife and 3 sons. Exactly the same family. This,
the wife of Seth? What was her name?
The wife of Seth, don't remember, sorry. But, it's there. But all the generations are expressed in the biblical record. So Noah's family's task is to restore Adam's family's failure. So Noah gets the task to restore Adam's failure, and he gets the task to make the foundation of faith. His eldest son and his second son should have the task to restore Cain and Abel's failure, which also means restoring Adam's and the archangel's failure. But it doesn't happen. It never happens. It didn't come about. Why doesn't it come about? Well, we'll explain. Okay, so foundation of faith is made by Noah. He becomes the man instead of Adam to demonstrate his faith in God by doing something that is directed by God, which is actually a very, very tough task. The task he's given is to build a very large ark or boat and to prepare for a great flood that's going to come. In the biblical record, this is a long process. It takes him many, many years to build it. And, the flood doesn't come straight away. When the flood, that's a whole process in itself. According to the biblical record, which it's a different type of timing at that time, it takes 120 years. Finally, when the flood does come, it's a 40-day flood. And extraordinarily, what happens as a result of this flood is the flood water comes, all the rest of humanity consumed by the flood, just Noah's family is separated out. So the principle explains this is like a division process. It's divide good and evil. So it explains in the principle that God is so upset with everything and he can't see any way to create the indemnity condition. There is no way to give the Messiah because everything's so messed up and it's messed up and it's messed up and everything is messed up. But God finds one righteous family and he separates that righteous family out, and that righteous family becomes a new beginning to human history. So here we go. This is explained in a little bit more detail. So God says to Noah, build the ark. The principle even says this ark. This is, of course, an ark with 16 decks. No, this is an ark with 3 decks. Why is it an ark with 3 decks? The principle explains because this represents formation, growth, and completion. This represents origin, division, union. This is representative of remaking the whole of creation. When the ark is separated from fallen humanity by the flood, it's like this is a new world in this boat. It's a new world. It contains humanity. Who's humanity? Noah, his wife, his 3 sons and their wives. This is the new humanity. And of course the animals are gathered there as well. Father Moon reveals many other interesting points. He explains when God said to Noah, build me an ark, where would you normally build a boat? You build a boat by the seaside, build a lakeside. Father Moon's revelation is he said to Noah, build the ark on top of the mountain. I mean, this is really mad. And he explains Mrs. Noah had a tough time. I mean, that's true of, you think about it. You think about significant religious figures. Not easy for misses. Not easy for misses. So anyhow, he builds this ark and it takes a long time, and then, of course, as the flood water rises, all the animals, you don't have to run out and catch them. They're all brought by the flood waters to the ark. So inside the ark, the animals representing the creation, his family representing humankind, and Noah, in a sense, whoa, what a thought. Noah's representing God. Noah's representing what Adam, in a sense, should have representing God. What was God thinking? The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the ground, man and beast and creeping things and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. Of course, no one was there to sound record, and God doesn't make an audible sound anyhow. But somehow, when those words were written down, when that revelation was conveyed, it's somehow trying to convey the heart of God. But we'll study this later. God doesn't basically operate through destruction. But the reality is, if you want to help somebody, but they will not be helped, however much you want to help them, if they don't create the condition, in the end, you can't recover it. So it's referring to that type of circumstance. But, extraordinarily, God is always looking for the righteous person, and of course he found it in Noah's family. So central figure for the foundation of faith, Noah, offering, building the ark. Time period involved, 40-day flood through which this family and the contents of the ark get separated from all the rest of humanity. It's a division, separation of good and evil process. Noah's family are meant to purify themselves and separate themselves from Satan. God said, you, Noah, shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives. And then the flood comes, the rain falls, 40 days, 40 nights, and they're separated by the process. There's huge amount of symbology and deep meaning in the whole story of Noah's thing. Again, if we go into it all, it takes too long. I just mentioned very briefly, the principle tries to explain all these interesting bits and pieces. So, the flood's subsiding, quite a number of days have gone by, the flood's water starting to subside, and Noah's in the ark, and he takes a raven, and he releases a raven, and it flies off, and actually it doesn't return. And the principle explains this raven is representing Satan, who's waiting to find a landing place. So Satan hasn't gone away. He's not going to lose his control over everything. This family is comparatively righteous, has been separated out, but it's his lineage. He's looking for a place to land. And then, next thing is, Noah releases a dove. And the dove goes off and flies around and comes back. It's no place for it to settle. And then he releases another dove 7 days later, and this dove flies around and it comes back with an olive branch. So what does this mean? Olive branch. It means there's trees out of the water, that are, the flood is subsiding. There's a sign of hope to be able to resettle, to be able to reestablish the original world that Adam and Eve were established in. And then the third dove is like let loose by Noah, and it doesn't return. It means it settles. And the principle explains this represents a 3-stage process. This is, the principle relates this to Adam, to the second Adam, and to the third Adam. And we'll explain more about that later. But fundamentally it's to do with Adam, Jesus, and the second advent. But it's also more fundamentally to do with the 3-stage process, because passing through 3 stages, you reach to the goal. So this becomes a significant factor later on, also in Abraham's family. So 40-day flood judgment in Noah's time. These numbers repeat themselves at many significant moments in the history of the Bible and in the history of Abraham's family. And these are just a few examples. In the Israelites' course, 40 years in the wilderness, 400 years in Egypt. Moses' course, 40-day fast, done several times. Jesus' course, 40-day fast. These numbers centered on 440 repeating themselves many times. Why? Because I explained God is a mathematical God. God operates in an orderly way. To make a condition of faith, you can't just do it in a second, in a moment. You need to maintain it over a time period. By maintaining it over a time period, you substantiate it in yourself. It's not just something that you decide for a moment. You actually turn it into substance in your own life, as it were. God said to Noah, isn't this interesting? Go forth from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Noah built an altar to the Lord and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Exactly what he said to Adam and Eve, right? Because they are, in a sense, they're restoring that position. Picture of Mount Ararat, there where the ark is said to have settled. So Noah did it. He made the ark. He labored those 120 years. They survived the flood judgment. His family owed everything to him. He saved their lives because of his faith and love for God. But now we move on to the foundation of substance. So the foundation of substance should take place between Ham, the second son, in the Abel position, and Shem, the eldest son, in the Cain position, which means also Adam's position and the archangel's position. You remember that, okay? So there's a lot of content here, and if you get a bit fuzzy in the head, it's very difficult to follow, because there's a lot of information here, but there's a book, and there's a discussion period, and there's the rest of your life. So don't worry. You can work on it, right? Okay, so Ham must inherit. So before Ham can stand in his position is a little bit different from Abel's, because remember, Abel made the offering himself. It should have been Adam, but he did it instead of Adam. So he's already demonstrated faith in God, so he doesn't have to do anything else to stand in the Abel position towards Cain. But Ham hasn't done anything. He hasn't demonstrated faith, so he's got to inherit it from his father. That doesn't succeed, and hence the foundation of substance never takes place. So there's a necessary condition that Ham should stand in the position of Abel. He has to have respect for, confidence in, he has to be following the example of catching the heart, of understanding the quality of his father, but he doesn't. Where is this manifested? It's manifested in the story, which is in Genesis chapter 9. I'll tell you the story very shortly. So it says, Noah settles, plants grapevines, harvests the grapes, makes wine, drinks wine, gets drunk. He's lying in his tent, no clothes on, absolutely drunk. Ham comes in, sees father lying drunk and naked. Oh, disgusting, terrible. Don't want to even see it. Don't want to have anything to do with it. Get my two brothers, tell them your dad's in there drunk. Get a blanket, Walk backwards, don't look at him, just drop it over the top of him, cover his nakedness. And that's basically all it says. But after it, when Noah wakes up, what does he say to Ham? He says, your descendant, your son Cain and his descendants will be a slave to their brothers. And it's very, very upset with him. So, is it there somewhere? Yeah, well, anyhow, is it there? No, anyhow, it explains a little bit more in a minute. So what's happened in this instant is Ham has not understood the heart of his father. What's this about? This is about a sort of attitude of, without having any real quality yourself, you look at other people and you decide what they are and they aren't based on your very shallow understanding. Do you know the sort of thing I mean? You didn't do anything, but you look at somebody who did a lot, and because they picked their nose, or because they scratched their head, or because they have too odd socks on, or they don't wear in the right hat, or their jewelry's naff, or whatever it is, they're no good. But what it means is you don't perceive the quality of the person at all. So Ham was not able to stand in the Abel position to his brother Shem, and the foundation of substance was never made. The principle points out a very interesting fact. Before the fall, Adam was naked and unashamed. After the fall, Adam became ashamed of his nakedness. What's this about? Ham is looking at Noah and seeing him naked and ashamed. This has a resonance of that circumstance. And as I said, when he woke up, Noah said to him, "Cursed be Canaan, a slave of slaves shall he be to his brothers." He said that to Ham. So the foundation of substance never took place in Noah's family because Ham couldn't stand in the position. He couldn't inherit his father's foundation of faith. So this is very profound type of thought about what quality it takes to recognize the righteousness of another and to inherit it from them. It's not easily done. So as a result, God, who had huge expectation towards Noah's family, his heart is broken again and he lost it again. He thought he'd established a circumstance where he could re-establish humanity centering on this righteous family. And the restoration providence is prolonged again. So what lessons can we learn from Noah's family? Again, God did not interfere because it's to do with human responsibility. Of course, God gives pointers or God gives directions or whatever it is, or what's the pointer? The pointer is Ham is alive. That's the pointer. And why is he alive? Because of his dad. That's why he's alive. So it's a pretty blindingly obvious pointer in a sense. That he should know, it doesn't matter if his dad gets a bit drunk and lies naked. I mean, fundamentally, this man of extraordinary righteousness did what God asked and saved the whole family. And so who's he to say something? It's nothing in comparison with who he really is. He doesn't understand the heart and core of who the person is. So that was his responsibility. So we need humility, obedience, and patience to go the way of faith. You will not recognize the good person unless you have a sort of mind, heart, and quality to recognize goodness in others. So, that guy is so generous, he's so kind, he's so weak, he's so stupid. What an idiot, That type of thinking. You know how it goes. You know these sorts of patterns. So like in school with all the friends, you know what happens to the guy who's most diligent. Do you know what I mean? You know what happens to him. People are envious and, accusing and all this type of thing is happening. Beware of criticism and from criticizing from a self-centered perspective. That's what Ham did. So, history of restoration, Abraham's family. This is very important because this family manages to do it. So, we say this is a model. This family sets a model, and in particular, within the family, in the third generation, Jacob sets a very significant model because he finally managed to fulfill the foundation of substance, and nobody did it before. So the principle says this is a very important family to study in order to comprehend how to make a foundation to receive the Messiah. Why should we be interested? Because the Messiah already came, right? And then what's it got to do with us? We don't have to do that. But no, this is setting a pattern. This is showing a pattern how to make a base for God and goodness and how to let God's authority recover everything. So basically, we say we study the history to find out what we have to do. Also, the principle explains that Jesus came as the Messiah but was not received, and we'll look at this in detail later on, and consequently, the Messiah has to come again. So in other words, making a foundation to receive the Messiah is not just some historical task, it is a current task. And actually, in a sense, even if the Messiah does come, who's going to have the foundation to have give and take with the Messiah? Who will have it? So someone needs to have it first, because otherwise the Messiah doesn't have anybody to have give and take with, right? But in the end, everybody has to make a foundation to receive the Messiah. And it cannot be unconditional. Do you understand? There must be some condition fulfilled. Like Jesus died 2,000 years ago, right? But to make a condition to receive Jesus, you would still need to make a foundation of faith and substance yourself, or your family, or your nation. When religion expands and grows, like Britain, for example, anyhow, when some element of Christianity returned to Britain, it came down the road in Canterbury. And this man came and as a Christian missionary, and he converted the King of Kent. In other words, he stood in the able position, and he converted the King of Kent, and then Kent became a Christian kingdom, and then it spread and it spread. And this type of phenomena occurred, around the world in that process. I'm sure it occurred in Buddhism. There's King Ashoka, who was converted to Buddhism, and he was 2nd century after Buddha or whatever, when he established a huge kingdom, and this type of phenomenon is taking place. Okay, so Abraham's family. So we remember we have Noah, Shem, and Ham. Ham doesn't inherit his father's foundation of faith, can't play the role of Abel, can't make the foundation of substance. And it's Shem who the line comes from. So there's another son, a third son, but in this case, God doesn't work from the third son's lineage, he works from the first son's lineage. This is quite interesting, and in a minute we'll explain why. Before it was 1600 years and 10 generations, now it's 400 years and 10 generations, but fundamentally it's the same mathematical condition, or it's the same period of time in which God is not able to work because of the mistake that was made. But after the passage of that period of time, through the passage of that period of time, a condition is made through that time passing for God to be able to work again. And he finds somebody, Abraham. Very interestingly, this is, in a sense, a worthy descendant of Shem, because actually he comes from a family that has a tradition which he completely ends up standing against. And this is a tradition of, idol making and multiple gods and all this type. And he becomes the father of monotheism. Extraordinary. And he has 2 sons, and we'll explain more about this in a minute. Okay, so the principle explains how it happens. The principle explains God had expectation towards Ham, but actually he shows a bad attitude, and as a result, he can't stand to work for God. In fact, he, in a sense, becomes invaded by Satan through his superficial understanding of who his father is. So God, who lost the person he should have had, then takes someone from Satan's side. He takes the first son of Terah, the idol maker. So in other words, very interesting point this, in history or in life, someone's comparatively blessed by God, right? And has comparatively good inheritance and good lineage and good background. But if that person loses it all, messes it all up, God is still looking for somebody, and God will take someone from the other side. And that person will become. So, what's the lesson in this? I'm a Christian. We're forever blessed. I am a Jew, I am a Muslim, whatever it is. But I tell you, if you don't keep the right way, your position is lost in front of God, and God will find somebody else. And where will he find somebody else? He has to go to some place where that foundation of maybe thousands of years or hundreds of years of establishment isn't there anymore. And God will find someone there and he will build it again. Because God had to do that many times in reality. So that's the way it works. So this is what God said to Abraham. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, so you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who curses you I will curse. And by you all the families of the earth shall bless themselves. So again, it's not maybe exactly the same words, but fundamentally God gives a hugely significant blessing to Abraham. He also says to him, your descendants will number the number of grains of sand in the desert, the number of stars in the heavens. And they didn't have electric lighting, in that time. So when you looked up at the heavens, you saw an awful lot of stars, right? So he gives this huge, significant blessing to Abraham, and he calls him to do something. Basically, what he calls him to do is leave home. So he's in Ur in Chaldea. His family is comparatively affluent, probably well settled, and God gives him a direction: leave home, and go where I direct you to go. So he becomes like a wanderer, with nothing. What he can carry, what they can transport with whatever, horses or donkeys or mules or whatever it is they have, they take with them. And he goes from Ur and he travels to the geographical location which becomes the geographical center of all the action of Abraham's descendants. This is Canaan. But when he gets there, there's a drought and he can't stay there. So he builds an altar and he makes an offering to God and so on. But then there's a drought and he goes out of Canaan and he goes to Egypt. And when he goes to Egypt, Oh, where am I here? Yes, I'm here. I'm right. He goes with his wife. His wife is called Sarah. They don't have any children, but he has his nephew with him called Lot. And they travel together into Egypt. And when they are heading for Egypt, when they're about to cross the border into Egypt, he said to his wife, well, please now, from now on, you're not my wife. From now on, you're my sister. Pretend to be my sister. We're brother and sister. We're not husband and wife anymore. Interesting. And then they arrive in Pharaoh's territory, and Pharaoh hears about this amazingly beautiful woman called Sarah, and he wants her. And he takes her into his household. And his intention is clear because he's a rich king, he's got a lot of wives. But actually in the process, Pharaoh takes Sarah into his household, but it describes in the process that in the end, Pharaoh understands through a dream, through a message from God, that actually Sarah is not Abraham's sister. Sarah is Abraham's wife. And he's about to make a major, major, major mistake. And he calls Abraham and said, why didn't you tell me? I nearly made a terrible mistake. Here's your wife. I haven't done anything to her. Here's your wife. And not only here's your wife, Lot, and I'm going to give you all this wealth and all these gifts. So the principle explains it makes an initial condition to restore what took place at the time of the fall. At the time of the fall, Adam and Eve were as brother and sister. Lucifer came and he took Eve. So Pharaoh's in the role of Satan, or Lucifer tries to take Sarah, who's in the role of Eve, but actually he can't take her, he has to give her back to Adam. So it's like Adam restoring Eve, and not only Eve, children represented by Lot, and things represented by the wealth. So it's like the three blessings recovered in this way. And then after that condition is made, God sets up a circumstance where he asks now Abraham to make a foundation of faith. And he asks him to make it by making a certain offering, an animal offering. And there's a very specific aspect to this animal offering. God says the animals must all be cut in two. And what does this represent? It represents, again, separation, like Cain and Abel, like the flood judgment separated Noah's family from the rest of humanity. So now all the animals have to be cut. This side belongs to God, and God can work and use it. This side belongs to Satan. These animals are an offering representing, the principal book says, the cosmos, everything. God takes these animals as if they're everything. And through the act of cutting them and the blood flowing, he's separating good and evil. And it represents creating conditions so that God will have a good side, and with that good side, he'll create the foundation to receive the Messiah. So the offering is actually these particular animals. It's two doves, a sheep and a goat, and a heifer. The principle explains quite profoundly about the meaning of these different animals, and I won't go into the whole detail of it, but fundamentally it explains they represent these three stages: formation stage, growth stage, completion stage. So you can imagine whatever tools Abraham has available to him, they're not very sophisticated. So a heifer, what's a heifer? It's a female, it's a young female cow. It's a pretty big task to cut one in half, right? Cut in half, blood flows. This becomes a very significant element within Judaism. It's also a very significant element within Islam. It's to do with cutting, releasing blood in order to purify. It also connects, of course, to conditions like circumcision and so on as well. So he does it. He cuts the sheep. He cuts the goat. He gets very tired. He falls asleep. He never cut the birds. He didn't cut the birds. And then he wakes up and a terrible feeling comes over him. And he looks and he sees the birds of prey descending on the offering. And he knows, I didn't do it. I didn't make it. It was such a significant moment when I was being directly asked something by God and I didn't do it. This is, the principle explains, this is a lesser indemnity condition. God is creating this moment on the foundation of 400 years and 10 generations to make a new beginning. God is claiming Abraham and his family. God is taking this special condition they made by going to Egypt. And then God's creating a situation saying, you do this one, and I will make a new beginning with you. I will take what you've done as purifying humanity, the whole of the cosmos, and I will make a new beginning based on this. So how he did it becomes very significant. So you think about any religious ceremony. You're making the puja, You're making the 5 prayers every day. This is bringing the grace of God to you. You're going to the Holy Communion and you're receiving the bread and the wine. It's a simple thing to do. So what do you do to get more blessings? You come into the communion queue and you push all the old ladies over and you get to the priest and you grab the glass of the wine out of his hand and you drink everything, and you get the bottle and you pour me and you drink all of that, and you take all the wafers of bread and you eat them all and you get more blessing. Do you think? You don't. You don't get anything. So if you're offered a lesser indemnity condition, what's most significant is that you appreciate this is a moment of intense grace. Somehow a condition has been created by God and by, indemnification processes. And in this moment, I can do something which becomes decisively significant to take a new course, which God will claim, and to get cut from Satan and a new beginning to emerge. So that is such a moment. God is giving it that significance, but he doesn't comprehend it and he doesn't complete the process correctly. He doesn't cut the birds. So when he wakes up, he feels very, very difficult. And God speaks to him and says, your descendants will be enslaved and they will be mistreated for 400 years. Wow, I'm up here. But think about it. It's God behaves in a principled fashion. So basically the 400 years preparation, which was restoring the previous 60, got lost. So, to recover it, another 400 years is necessary. Because this moment of grace got lost. So the 400 years from Noah to Abraham becomes the 400 years of slavery. And this becomes a payment to establish a new foundation. So God's original plan for Abraham is like this. Abraham would make the animal offering successfully. And through that, he would create a condition to separate his family from Satan and to create a condition so that Satan couldn't claim the family. God could claim the family. God would work with the family. And in Abraham's children, who were Ishmael and Isaac, Ishmael was not the son of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Ishmael was the son of Abraham's serving woman, Hagar. Why? Because Sarah couldn't have children. And they tried many, many times. She could not give birth to children. So she said to Abraham, take this serving woman and have a child with her. And he has a child, and this child is Ishmael. And this child is a great blessing to him. But then at a very elderly age, and when God says to Abraham, I will now give your wife Sarah a child, and that child is born, it's Isaac, he doesn't even believe it, he laughs. But anyhow, Isaac is born. And the principle explains they're cast in the position of Abel and Cain, first son, second son. They're cast in the position of Adam and the archangel. And very interestingly, if you look at the Christian tradition, or Judeo-Christian tradition, you'll find that they identify the person who inherits from Abraham as Isaac. But if you look at the Muslim tradition, it's very clear the person who's offered as a sacrifice is Ishmael, not Isaac. It's different. But the point is not these two conflictual stories in a sense. The point is what has to be done to recover what's been lost, and how is it that this family gets another opportunity to restore the situation. Anyhow, the Cain and Abel situation is never played out between Isaac and Ishmael. What does this mean? It means the foundation of faith is not made. There can't be a foundation of substance. This is lost, this is lost. So before anything else can be done, the same situation repeats itself again. This time God, there's a drought in the land. Abraham leaves Canaan. He goes into Gerar. The king of Gerar, Sarah's not a young lady anymore. It's an extraordinary circumstance. But anyhow, the king of Gerar takes Sarah into his house and wants to make her his wife. And then he has again this experience. He has a dream. He's told by God it's not the sister of Abraham, because Abraham says, my sister. He gives him back. He gives back slaves and he gives back wealth. And it's a restoration of exactly this same pattern of the fall again. And then on that foundation, God gives the direction to Abraham again. Abraham gets another opportunity. Why does he get another opportunity? Because he's standing on the foundation of Abel and Noah, who both successfully made the foundation of faith. And because this is the third attempt, and the principle says there's a condition that through the third attempt there should be success, because this is the pattern of, formation, growth, and completion. But in order for him to recover the circumstance and the mistake that he's made, he must make a greater indemnity condition. So he's not now asked to sacrifice animals; he's asked to sacrifice his son. As I said, in the Judeo-Christian account, it's Isaac. In the Quranic account, it's Ishmael. But anyhow, his beloved son. And remember, God has said to him, "Your descendants will number the sands of the desert, the grains of sand in the desert, and the stars in the heavens." You have to take him and you have to sacrifice him. So Abraham takes him to the place of sacrifice, and they take 3 days to walk there. On the way, Isaac asks him, where's the offering? Because he knows about offerings. Where's the ram? Where's the goat? Where's the animal we're going to offer? Well, don't worry about that, son. And then, the Bible story depicts the circumstance where the knife is poised in Abraham's hand, right? He's got Isaac ready, or Ishmael ready if you come from that tradition, and he's ready to sacrifice him for God. And then an angel comes and stays his hand and prevents him from doing it. And it says that God says to Abraham, "Do not lay your hand on the lad or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." So, through this greater indemnity condition, Abraham has separated his family that had been invaded, and the circumstance which God wanted to use, which has been taken because this moment of grace, he missed it by being careless. So God has created a condition to recover it, to recover the circumstance. And he doesn't need to kill Isaac. He had the heart and readiness to offer even his son as a greater indemnity condition. So then, this is, again, we're following the Judeo-Christian line. So Isaac is inheriting the mission of Abraham. So then what happens is, one clear and important point is the relationship that Isaac has with Abraham is directly restoring the relationship that Ham had with Noah, because he's ready to be offered. I mean, it's not simple to be offered, is it? It's very, very difficult for the father to contemplate this idea, but fundamentally, Isaac submits himself to the circumstance. So he's restoring the situation between Ham and Noah. And so the offering becomes Isaac, but then actually the foundation of faith is... Is that how it ends? Actually, the offering is not Isaac. The foundation of faith is actually made in Abraham's family. The central figure is Isaac, and the offering becomes the ram in the thicket, right? So he's going to kill Isaac. He doesn't kill Isaac. And then God said, don't kill him. And then God directs their eyes and says, over in the bush there's a ram with horns. And its horns are caught in the bush and it can't escape. You catch that one and you make an offering of that one. And the principle explains that it's Isaac who makes it. Of course, they both make the offering. But from God's point of view, the principle explains it's Isaac who makes the offering. All the time you see time period there. We've referred a little bit to time periods. We've been explaining about, these things don't happen in a moment. There's a certain time and pattern. Also, what the principle is explaining is that what should have happened between Ishmael and Isaac doesn't happen, i.e. they don't play out the Cain-Abel relationship. Ishmael's Hagar's son, Isaac's Sarah's son, and actually something also happens between Sarah and Hagar, such that Sarah feels bad towards Hagar before Isaac is born, and she throws Hagar and Ishmael out of the home. And they're put into the wilderness. And it expresses in the Bible that God wishes to take care of them. And Hagar appeals to God, and God says to her that her descendants will become also great, and a great nation, and there will be 12 tribes, and there will be, and so on, and so on, and so on. So he receives a blessing as well. This is very interesting in the history of, in a sense, of Judaism, and out of it Christianity, and the history of Islam. And of course, there's a sort of there is an unresolved history involved here. And following the Judeo-Christian line, Isaac makes the offering instead of Abraham, in the place of Abraham, so he becomes the central figure. And he has 2 sons. And very interestingly, his wife, Rebecca, is pregnant, and she has this extraordinary experience when she's pregnant. There's a struggle going on inside her womb. And she prays to God, what's going on, God? And God explains to her, there's 2 children in your womb. She's bearing twins. And they are struggling with one another, but actually the younger one will overcome the elder one, and the elder one must serve the younger one. So she receives this revelation. What's this revelation about? This revelation is about foundation of substance, right? Because in the foundation of substance, the elder son, who's comparatively, relatively more on Satan's side, has to come under the younger son, who's comparatively on God's side, and then the one on God's side has to restore the birthright. And that's what happens in this family. So it's a prediction that God gives to God gives to Rebecca about the situation. So here we go. This is the right one. Yeah, that's the one. So Isaac's the central figure. He offers the ram. Foundation of faith is made. Foundation of substance now has to be paid out between Esau, representing Cain, and Jacob, representing Abel. Cain represents the archangel. Abel represents Adam. So what has to happen in this situation? Then Jacob has to gain the birthright. So he's the second son. He's the first son. When they're born as twins, of course. So Esau comes out first, and Jacob is so close behind, he's holding on to Esau's heel. He's that close. They're born in that fashion. So it's sort of like a race out. And if you know this story, the first thing that occurs by way of restoring the birthright occurs when they're both grown up. So Rebecca got the revelation when they were in her womb, but they grow up and they become adults. And Esau is a hunter. He goes out and he hunts and he kills animals and brings food back to the family. And Jacob is like a farmer. He stays near the home, and he farms near the home. And Esau goes out and he goes hunting. He doesn't catch anything. He comes back after a few days and he's absolutely starvingly hungry. And Jacob's got a mess of pottage. He's been growing lentils. He's got a lentil stew. And his brother Esau says, give me that food. I'm starving hungry. And he says to his brother, I'll give you the food, but in response you have to give me your birthright. And Esau agrees, and for the mess of pottage he sells his birthright. What's this business about birthright? This business of birthright is restoring this position. It means the younger son has to become the elder son. The elder son has to become the younger son to reverse the order, to recover the correct order. So the relatively good person is gaining authority over the relatively person on Satan's side. And then this is a very practical method to restore. So then not only does that happen, so that's already creating that condition, but then Isaac becomes a very old man. He's blind and he wants to bless his eldest son. So he says to his eldest son Esau, you go out and catch some special food for me. You catch a deer and you make a special stew for me. We're going to have a big celebration and I'm going to bless you, right? And you're going to receive the inheritance from me. Rebecca overhears the circumstance. Oh, that's not what's supposed to happen. Jacob's supposed to get the blessing. So Esau goes off to hunt. She says to Jacob, dress up like your brother. Put your brother's clothes on. Even go out in the yard and slaughter the goat to make the meal, and take the goat skin and put it on your arms, because your brother's a hairy man and you're a smooth man. And when you come to your father, he'll feel you and he'll feel you're the hairy man and he'll give you the blessing. So Jacob goes through this process and he actually gets blessed by Isaac. And then Esau comes back home after being out for the hunt and he discovers the circumstance. Jacob got blessed instead of me. And it's written very plain in the scripture. He says, after he discovers the circumstance, I can't kill him now, but after my father's died, I'll kill him. So this would not be the outcome, that God's searching. So Rebecca takes Jacob to one side. She overhears Esau's intent. She says, run away. Go to my brother's house, Laban, in Haran, and be there, and you'll be safe there. So Jacob goes to Haran. He spends 21 years in Haran, and he has a very, very tough time. But he overcomes all the trials and all the tribulations, and there's a huge story involved in that, where his uncle mistreats him. But as a result of that, in the end, he builds a very substantial family to do with actually marrying the sisters from the family. A very profound story involved in that, how actually he wants the beautiful young sister, gets married, he thought to the beautiful young sister, finds out that he's in bed with the older sister, Leah, who he didn't want to marry. And he had to work 7 years for that marriage. He arrives in the place, the first person he sets eyes on is Rachel. Wow, I want her, she's the one for me. I want your daughter. 7 years, you work 7 years, you have my daughter. Works 7 years, gets married, and the other one's in the bed. But in a sense, it's understandable. You want your elder daughter to be married first. So he goes and he protests, and Laban says to him, that's okay. You can have the other one too, 7 years. But you don't have to wait 7 years. You can marry her straight away, but you do the 7 years work afterwards. And then he does another 7 years work. And all along the line, Laban's trying to trick him, but every time he keeps an incredible attitude, and he works so diligently. And he manages to win out through every circumstance. So in the end, he becomes very wealthy. He has a lot of flocks, he has a lot of goats, a lot of sheep, a lot of things. And he has these 2 wives. And the wife of his choice, Rachel, doesn't have children. But the one he didn't choose, Leah, she has children. And then there's a difficulty occurring between them. And Rachel says to her serving woman, well, you have relationship, well, you have children on my behalf, because it's a children competition. And then her serving woman has children. Then Leah's getting a bit old, so she has her serving woman. So he has these 12 children in the end. Anyhow, he's finally, after 21 years, he understands what he has to do. He got the birthright because he bought it. He got the birthright because his father blessed him, but he hasn't been accepted by Esau. But he feels absolutely he has to return. Why should he return? Because to return is to place himself in danger. But he does return, and he ultimately meets with his brother. When he returns, he brings back with him this big family and all this wealth. And on the way in, he has this amazing experience of this spiritual battle, which is recorded in Genesis 25. So here it is. This is the place where he crosses the river at the ford of Jabbok, the Jordan River, which marks the passage into the territory of his family. And whilst he goes to sleep at night beside the river, and then he has this amazing spiritual experience. In this amazing spiritual experience, he's attacked. And he has a credible fight with his attacker. And during the fight, as I expressed, the fight is so really, his thigh is knocked out. Incredible. But he refuses to let go. And his assailant, the one who's attacking him, let me go, I won't let you go till I get your blessing. And the principle explains very clearly, he's wrestling with the angel. And in the wrestling with the angel, when he perseveres in this wrestling, and the angel actually gives him a name. His name has been Jacob. He said, now you have a new name. Your name is Israel. The victor, the one who struggles and got the victory. And then he crosses the river with all his family and all his goods, and he approaches his brother. And as he approaches his brother, he does so in a very extraordinary fashion. This fashion is a very sort of... so there's the fight with the angel, right? He does so in a very extraordinary fashion, which enables Esau to make the condition to remove his fallen nature. So actually he hasn't removed it. How do we know he hasn't removed his fallen nature? Because when he hears his brother Jacob has come back after 21 years, he goes out to meet him. He goes out, of course, with his wives and his children, and they have a big party and a picnic together in the desert. No. He goes out with 400 men. 400 men. He goes out with an army because he's remembered. He's not forgotten anything. So I'll kill him. I'm going to kill him. But Jacob pursues a method through which he melts the heart of Esau and wins him completely. And the method is actually, he sends a lot of gifts. These gifts are very substantial. They're not minor gifts. Basically, he's giving of all his wealth to his brother. He sends a lot of animals, a lot of gifts, and he puts his family in a certain order. And, so they approach Esau first, and Esau, what are all these gifts? Where do these gifts come from? And then finally, at the end, Jacob and Esau are standing facing one another. And Esau's already been profoundly affected by all these gifts. And then Jacob approaches him, and as he approaches him, he bows to the ground 7 times. And then he stands up after this act of humility. And he says to him, my brother, I see your face. To see your face for me is like I see the face of God. And his brother, who wanted to rip him to pieces, basically his whole heart melts. And they're reconciled. And they embrace one another. And the principle explains this is the fulfillment of the foundation of substance. So, Jacob has melted the heart. Jacob, because of his act of love, and this is no small action, this is built in a sense on the foundation of a 21-year course of going through difficulty and maturing and persevering and going through a spiritual discipline and being ready then to give all that you've got to your brother, and actually going through this spiritual experience with the angel beforehand as well. So they become united, and this family manages to establish the foundation of substance. The principle explains that's why from this family the Messiah is ultimately born. So here it goes, 400 armed men, Jacob with the gifts and the boughs, and embracing one another and weeping. Actually, Father Moon explained, not in the Divine Principle book, but he explained later, this should have been a lasting, total reconciliation, and they should have lived together as two families thereafter, and that would have brought a different outcome than what finally happened. So Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. I pray you, if I have found favor in your sight, this is what Jacob says to Esau, then accept my present from my hand, for truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God. With such favor you have received me. Accept, I pray you, my gift that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. So I give it all to you, because I don't need it, I have enough. Very incredible, beautiful heart. Esau loved Jacob, so received the love of God in the position of restored Cain. The foundation of substance was successfully laid on the family level. This was at the third attempt through 3 generations. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob got the new name, Israel. And, when God is asked, who is he said, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The principle explains, from God's point of view, fundamentally they're like one person. God regards Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as though they were one person. And the principle explains that this course, this success this family makes, is a model then for how to make the foundation to receive the Messiah, how to restore faith, and how to restore faith in God, how to restore the heart towards God, which is manifest by Abraham and then by Isaac, and how to restore a dominion which is based not on force, power, corruption, but is based on love. And how through that to restore the person who's, in a sense, at the mercy of wrong attitudes, to be badly influenced, to be on Satan's side, how to separate them from that influence, because he wants to kill him, right? And how to draw him onto God's side. This also has a connection to the role of the Messiah and the relationship of human beings. It's another aspect. David will develop more on that later. So now we have a foundation to receive the Messiah. So of course the Messiah is going to come, right? But the Messiah doesn't come. In terms of the biblical history, which is fairly historical, from Abraham's time to Jesus' time is 2,000 years. It's a long time coming. Why is it a long time coming? Because this foundation is a family level foundation, but it's not that family foundation is no longer enough to deal with the foundation that Satan has. Because Satan has nations, huge nations. What sort of nations? Well, huge civilizations. The Egyptian civilization, Assyrian civilization, for example. These huge civilizations. But Father Moon explained that if this family, God was trying to open a way for this family to expand itself into a nation and become an able nation, and then be able to influence a Cain-type nation and take a very powerful foundation for the Messiah to come to. So what lessons can we learn from Abraham's family? When human beings fail in their responsibility, the providence is prolonged and a greater condition of indemnity must be set. Why is this important for us to comprehend? Because it applies. It applies to myself, it applies to my nation, it applies to my religion, it applies, in that sort of a way. We must separate good and evil within ourselves through a life of sacrifice. This is the cutting and the division of good and evil. How do we do it? We don't cut ourselves in half, but actually we try and really identify what is not godly in myself and throw it away and develop what is godly within myself. Abel must serve unconditionally, and Cain's heart can be changed then, and Satan then will surrender. So what the principle explains is Cain is like, or in this sense, Esau is like the physical representation of Satan. By Jacob melting his heart and bringing him to tears and bringing about a reconciliation, he's winning the voluntary surrender of Esau. Behind Esau is Satan. So that's the way to win, as it were, the voluntary surrender of Satan. Okay, so ran over, but I hope you got some interesting things there. Again, it's too much information in too short a space of time, but there's plenty of time to study it more. So I hope you got some good information. Thanks a lot for your patience and attention.